Hi, and welcome to Running on Carbs podcast. I am Coach Val. I am your host and your coach of the podcast. And I'm so excited to be welcoming you here to the very first episode. This is going to be just a little quick welcome and introduction, give you an idea of who I am, my background, and what to expect from the podcast going forward. Just a quick heads up and note: if you prefer to watch this podcast in a visual manner and listen, it will be over on YouTube as well. So if you want to hop on over to YouTube, you can watch this on my channel at Running on Carbs on YouTube. But if you choose to just listen, if you're on the go, in the car, that's how I often consume my podcasts also, walking the dog, exercising, then you can just stick right where you are and listen in whatever form you are listening through. So, a little about me and my background. Um, I am a run coach, certified run coach through two organizations, RRCA and USCA. USCA is more science based, and RRCA, although science based, really focuses a lot on training programs, putting together uh, training plans, the business of coaching. So each one has a different flavor to it. And I found a lot of value in having both certifications because each one brings a little something different to them. So having both certifications, I think, makes me a better, well rounded coach. I'm also a nationally certified personal trainer through ISSA. I took the proctored exam, so that makes me nationally certified, which means that the exam was proctored, closed book, no notes, and timed. So I am nationally certified as a personal trainer, and I thought that that was important. I never really had um, an indication that I would get a certified personal trainer certification. But I thought it was important because it allowed me to put together strength plans for my runners, whereas neither USCA or RRCA certify you to be able to put together strength plans. So having the certified personal trainer or certification allows me to do that and not work outside the scope of my run coaching certification. I am also a corrective exercise specialist. I have that designation as well. And again, I thought that was a really important thing. I did it honestly for me because I was having aches and pains. And I mean, once you get up over 40 and you're running and doing, lots of heavy physical activity, things don't always feel so good. So I wanted to know how to take care of my own body. So I got the corrective exercise specialist designation at the same time as my personal trainer certification. Uh, I am also a fitness nutritionist through ISSA. The biggest difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian, at least here in the United States, is that a dietitian can put together meal plans and can tell you, sort of what to eat within those plans. I prefer to go from more of a consultative route. I like to help people put together food plans that they want and that they can do on their own. So rather than directing a client to eat specific foods, I work with them to know what foods they like, what foods they want to eat, and then putting them together in a way that makes sense for them so that they can learn to eat in a manner that supports within their own lifestyle. And so it's more of a coaching environment than it is a directive health um, uh, diagnostic environment. I myself enjoy endurance running. So I ran my very first marathon when I was 47 years old, and it was a incredible experience. And I would be happy to go into more on that in future episodes, and I'm sure I will because it was quite a learning experience. So it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work, a lot of commitment and dedication, and I just learned so much from the whole experience. And I myself have been plant-based since 2017. So long before I ran that first marathon, I moved to a plant-based diet solely, stopped eating all animal products of all kinds, no dairy, eggs, or meat, and no fish either. And it's the best choice I ever made. So if that's something that you do, or if you are interested in or curious about, that's an area that this podcast will focus on quite extensively. My running journey was that I always wanted to be a runner. I tried and failed and restarted lots and lots of times. I remember one of the first times trying to run. I live by the beach, and so I thought it would be so wonderful to go down to the beach and run on the beach. Mind you, I was not a big exerciser at the time, and I was not a runner basically at all. So just decided one morning I'm going to go run on the beach. So I did. It was freezing, number one, and wet. So it was wet and cold, and I was out of shape. And I remember running along the beach going, "This is miserable." My lungs were burning. I was out of breath. I was exhausted. And I think I didn't run again for years because that was the most miserable experience ever. So note to self, don't take off running in cold, wet air at top speed and think that you're going to feel good. So, anyway, that was just one experience, but I had a lot of that where I would start and stop, things would happen, it wasn't comfortable, I didn't know what I was doing, and it looked so easy for everybody else, and I didn't understand why it was so hard for me. So, instead of running, I really became an at home exerciser. I love P90X and I love even more P90X2. I like to say that Tony Horton is my mentor, even though he doesn't know me. But we actually it worked out together quite a bit during 2020. He did a lot of live Facebook exercise programs. They were so cool. So that we would do live yoga, I think on Sundays. Wednesday was live plyo. And it was fantastic. I loved it. So I guess maybe he saw me in there then. But anyway, that's one of my favorites. I love P90X and X2. Not much of a gym goer though. I've joined a gym a couple times in my life and they served their purpose at the time, but mostly I would just get on the treadmill and try to run. So eventually I gave up on that and I bought my own treadmill so that I could just run at home and skip the gym cost and the drive to the gym and all of that. So I just have my own equipment at home, but nothing fancy. I don't have an in-house like basement gym or anything like that. I just put together my own free weights and equipment, and then I have my treadmill and my bike. So it's good for me. And I could always talk more about that too in later podcasts about how to build your own at-home gym without a ton of equipment. You really don't need it depending on what your goals are. But like I was saying, I just couldn't run a mile when I started. It was so tough for me. And I had a lot of limiting beliefs that were just holding me back. For a long time, I believed I couldn't run outside because it hurt too much and I would always get injured. They weren't serious injuries, but it was those aches and pains that I was talking about. My knees would hurt and my ankles and my feet, and I was tired, and my body would just hurt after trying to run. Turns out that sidewalks, concrete, are not friendly to runner bodies. So I don't run on concrete anymore if I could help it at all. But those were my limiting beliefs at the time, and they really did hold me back from learning how to run and enjoy it. My first 5K, I actually ran on a treadmill. And when I did that, I got hooked. And I ran a bunch of 5Ks after that, mostly on the treadmill. And I would do live races through a program called iFit on my Nordic Track treadmill. And they were a lot of fun. I mean, they would send you medals and everything, and it was live. There was a trainer who would be running the actual race, though they were like real races. but you were not there. The trainer was there, but you would follow along with them. And the treadmill would go at a certain pace. And if they would go uphill, my treadmill would go up and then it'd go down. So it was really fun. And it was like being there without having to be there. So one of my first 5Ks, my 5K race was done on a treadmill. And after that, just got excited about running and ended up doing a half marathon. And a little while later, moved up to a marathon after several halves. So it was fantastic. I really enjoyed the progression. On my plant-based journey, like I said, I've been, excuse me, plant-based for 7 years. Um, I was watching a show on TV, and that television show just absolutely changed my life. In the program, they were talking about the cholesterol, and cholesterol is one of the things that I have hereditary in my family. So I've had issues with it over the years myself. Um, Not to a serious degree, but something that needed to be addressed. And so I wasn't eating very much red meat at the time. I'd cut that out mostly, and but I was eating a lot of fish. I was eating a lot of tilapia. I'd buy huge bags from Costco, and I would eat just tilapia almost every night for dinner. Well, in the program, they we were talking about cholesterol, and they said tilapia has as much cholesterol as a pork chop. And I went, "What?" So I paused the show. I got up, went to the freezer, pulled out my massive bag of tilapia. And if I recall, I think I'd eaten like one or two fillets out of it at that point. And I turned it over, looked at the nutrition label, and realized it had a lot of cholesterol in it. And I don't know why, but I didn't know much about nutrition at the time, quite honestly. And it and I don't know why it never occurred to me that, of course, it's a meat, it's fish, it's going to have cholesterol in it. But it just didn't occur to me, I suppose. At the time, I thought, "Oh, fish, it's good for you." I ate it. I thought it was better than meat. Anyway, turned out I looked it up on the internet, and sure enough, tilapia had as much cholesterol as it in it as a pork chop. So I'm like, I could have been eating pork chops this whole time, and instead I was eating this crappy fish. But anyway, I had a better attitude after I got through that part, and I stopped eating the tilapia. But I decided at that very moment that plant based was the way to go because the tilapia wasn't doing it. I was still struggling, which is why I was watching the program in the first place, wondering, what's wrong? Why is this still, haunting me? And why can't I fix this cholesterol issue? So that's when made a decision to go plant based. And we'll talk about that in future episodes as well, making a decision and the power that decision has on your life. But nobody else in my life or in my family ate the way that I chose to eat now. So there was a lot of learning that I had to do and a lot of relearning and retraining my own self on how to cook, foods to eat, how to combine foods so that they made sense, um, how not to overeat because there's a lot of misconstrued information out there that says if you go plant-based, you can eat as much as you want. Let me tell you right now in episode 1, that is not true. If you care about your weight, you cannot eat as much as you want. Because personally, I have a really big appetite. And if you are a runner, you probably do too. And you cannot eat as much as you want and expect not to gain weight. So we'll get that out of here in episode 1 right away. But I had to learn how to navigate, all on my own. I didn't really have anyone. I listened to some webinars and read books, but it took me time. And so, what I hope to help people do through this podcast and through my coaching is to cut that time short so that you don't have to go through that learning curve like I did, so that you can learn these things faster and not discover from a TV show that tilapia has cholesterol. So, that's my hope in this podcast, too. The reason for my podcast honestly is a little selfish. I really like to talk about running, and I really like to talk about food and plant-based food in particular. I think that others can really learn from my trial and error that I already went through because I've really picked up a lot of tips along the way, and I love to share. So if my trial and error can help somebody else avoid the trial and error, then that is what I want to do. Help people who might not have a support system. I didn't have a support system. I still don't really have a support system, but I've learned to navigate it and I know how to work with it. And my attitude, I think, has helped quite a lot with my family dynamics and social dynamics and such. And, within this podcast, I really hope to build a community of like minded runners and like minded women and like minded um, plant-based eaters and dieters. I try not to use the word dieter because it's not a diet per se as far as like weight loss. You will not hear me talk a lot about weight loss in this podcast. That's one thing that I am not. Although weight, I think, is a important health indicator, it is not everything. And runners come in all shapes and sizes, and I think everyone deserves good nutrition. And that's what I really focus on here. So we won't talk a lot about using plant-based diet for losing weight. You might lose weight, but if you're training hard and you're training for a marathon, oftentimes you gain weight. And that is not different when you're on a plant-based diet. So if you are eating properly and well balanced, you should not be losing a ton of weight unless you started off with a completely different diet and it's a dramatic change for you. Everyone, of course, is going to be a little different, but I'm not focused on weight loss here in this particular podcast. What I am going to focus on, though, are running and everything related to running, racing, and recovery. Those are the three R's. Fueling before and after any workout or runs, because that's going to be key in doing it properly. Making sure that you're well fueled and have plenty of energy for your workouts, and that you're able to recover from those workouts using nutrition. The athlete mindset I will cover as well, because I think the athlete mindset spills over into every part of our life, whether it's in racing and running or any athletic endeavor or your nutrition and eating. The athlete mindset is a mindset all in and of itself. And then how to embody the plant-based diet lifestyle and pretty much everything that goes with it. Eating out, dealing with family members, dealing in social situations. It's a different lifestyle. It's not the general way of society, although it's gaining in I don't hate to say popularity, but it is gaining in popularity in many ways. So, but it's still not mainstream. So you do need tools in order to navigate mainstream life if this is how you choose to eat. I'll also talk about injuries. I've had a few of my own that I will share my journey and my story on. Recovery, which is so key, and strength training and prevention strategies. Again, going back to when I first started this podcast today, got my personal trainer certification because strength training is so key to staying healthy in running. And then we'll just bring it all together in real life. Practical tips. I am all about practical tips. You'll see that when I do talk about food, oftentimes my recipes, quote unquote recipes, are really food combining. So putting together foods that work well together, that give you the proper balance of nutrition, that taste good, that are really quick to put together, and maybe you can have, several times during the week. I'm all about prepping to a certain degree. So I'll prep a meal for a few days during the week, and then I'll just kind of dish it out in serving sizes, or I'll have ingredients that are all prepped for the week, and then I'll just combine them throughout the week into a meal, something that makes food prep quick and easy. Because I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of time. And I think a lot of people just don't have a lot of time these days. You have busy lives, you have family, you have work, you have careers, and you have your running. And we don't have a lot of time to prep fancy ingredients and meals and such. So, bringing it all together in real life is key to this podcast. And then lastly, I really hope to build a community. Um, Again, I said earlier that I don't have a lot of people that I talk to about running and plant based lifestyle. There's a lot of people who are very curious, but I want to build that community where I have people to talk to about my interests and their interests. And then we have shared interests. So, this podcast is all about building that community, and I would love it if you would support the podcast by liking it and subscribing so that you'll be notified each time an episode comes out. My plan is to make this a weekly podcast toward the end of the week before the weekend. And if you want to subscribe to the email list, that's another great way to stay in touch with me. Um, you can do that through the notes below. And then, of course, connect with me on social media. I put out posts on a regular basis there on both Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Instagram, it's running.on.carbs. And then Facebook and YouTube are simply running on carbs. And then if you're interested, you can always reach out to me and work with me directly through my one-on-one coaching or group coaching programs, which come about occasionally throughout the year. So anyway, I hope you've really enjoyed this first edition of Running on Carbs podcast, and that you will join me in future episodes. And hopefully we have a very long and happy and prosperous and healthy journey together. Thanks for listening.